Bueno, para mí la verdad es un placer poderles presentar al arquitecto Douglas Farr. Él es un arquitecto de la Universidad de Michigan. Él estudió en Ann Arbor y cuenta con una maestría en arquitectura por la Universidad de Columbia y es además LEED AP. Fundó en el año 1990 Farr Associates Architecture and Urban Design Inc., que es una firma de arquitectura sustentable y de planificación que está con sede en Chicago, Illinois. La firma diseñó 3 de los 4 edificios LEED Platinum de Chicago, más o menos para que tengan referencia en términos de la calidad de ese despacho para certificar edificios bajo el sistema LEED. Que estamos hablando del Center for Neighborhood Technology, Chicago Center for Green Technology y el Christie Weber Landscape. El Chicago Center for Green Technology logró estar dentro de los 10 mejores edificios premiados por la Comisión para el Medio Ambiente del American Institute of Architects y el premio al mérito del Chicago Building Congress y el premio ASRI, que es un mecanismo de certificación para el tema de la energía. En el año 2007, 3 proyectos de Farr Associates ganaron el A&A Chicago Excellent in Architecture Sustainable Building Award y Farr actualmente es presidente del Consejo de Administración del Congreso para el Nuevo Urbanismo. Ese Congreso para el Nuevo Urbanismo, si se recuerdan, fue una de las cosas que vieron en la clase de ayer justamente con el tema de la evolución de la sustentabilidad y justamente les comento que él pertenece a este Congreso de Administración, que es uno de los elementos pioneros en términos de la evolución de la sustentabilidad para las ciudades. Es miembro también del Comité Directivo de LEED y fue el presidente fundador del Comité LEED for Neighborhood Development, que como muchos de ustedes saben, fue una certificación para escala de barrio que no nació en paralelo con el sistema de certificación a nivel de edificios, ¿no? Él es fundador de la campaña Comunidades 2030, que busca reducir las millas recorridas por vehículo, que opera en Estados Unidos, y él escribió en el año 2007 este libro, que ahorita se los voy a pasar para que lo puedan hojear, que la verdad ha sido un referente muy importante en términos de diseño sustentable de ciudades, porque en este caso él hace, en este libro en particular, un esfuerzo por ver la conexión de la ciudad con la naturaleza, o sea, cómo podemos diseñar una ciudad haciendo esa conexión con esa parte de este elemento natural que muchas veces lo vemos como paisaje, pero finalmente pertenecemos a él como parte de nosotros como elemento de ese ecosistema, ¿no? Y su despacho ganó el A&A Chicago Firm del año 2012, que es un premio que se otorga a los despachos más destacados de la ciudad. Entonces, en este caso, una de las cosas que quiero resaltar en el caso de Douglas es que ha sido una persona que no solo se ha enfocado como a la parte de trabajar en un despacho sino que estamos hablando de que ha participado en términos de legislación, en el caso de sistemas de certificación, ha escrito libros, ha participado en el tema del Congreso de Urbanismo, o sea, ha tenido que ver con el tema de las asociaciones gremiales que tienen referencia o están alineadas con la sustentabilidad de ciudades y como con ese lente quisiera que vieran esta presentación. Prácticamente todos los años en que hemos ofrecido este diplomado hemos contado con la presencia de Douglas y la verdad para nosotros es un verdadero placer que él nos siga aceptando la invitación. Thank you so much for that, for accepting. Y quisiera entonces darle la palabra a Douglas Farr. Les voy a pasar el libro para que le echen un ojo en el transcurso de la conferencia y pues thank you very much for coming and welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes? It's good? How are we? We good? All right. That was a very gracious introduction. Thank you, Carlos. I feel very welcome. So, it's nice to be back. This is, I believe, my 4th year speaking to the program. And I want to know who you are. Who is an architect? Who is an engineer? Who is a planner? Who is an environmentalist? Who is a president, mayor, CEO? What am I forgetting? What else? Parent? Who has children? Okay, who votes? All right, good. So thank you for coming. So I want to tell my story. I'm very excited to be here, and It's an honor to come to this place because the program that you are studying in is very closely related to my passion, which is sustainable places. I hope, can everybody understand my English? I don't mumble, I don't slur, I should be fine. Okay. So my thesis is this, that the best route to sustainability is to deliver it without effort. So if you can make places that people love to be, that they want to be there all the time, they want to live there, they want to live there intensely and locally, and they aren't thinking about sustainability, that's the best. If you have to make people think, they often say no. They take the wrong course. But if they are attracted to something that happens to be sustainable, that's as good as it gets. So you'll see that. Okay? So I have an outline. It has two parts. I want to talk about making places people love, which I think is the highest function of sustainability, and the urban designers know what I'm talking about. Then we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to pose to you several burning questions, and you will answer them for me, because I don't know the answers. Okay? So first of all, I want to say that I am a generalist. One of the things you will hear about sustainability is that it is interdisciplinary, that everyone works together. The professions cooperate. They talk to each other. They collaborate. And I realized after many years as practicing as an architect, I forgot this. But I had, this is a list of all the majors I had in college before I chose architecture. Pre-med, chemistry, biology, botany, limnology, economics, poli-sci, anthropology, geography, planning, and finally architecture. So I am interdisciplinary, one person, right? So what I realize is being a generalist is a good thing. You often get scolded as you're studying, often by your parents or teachers. You need to specialize. You need to be good at one thing. Well, I wasn't really good at any of these. I touched them all. But I chose architecture in the end as the great consolidator of all of these things that interested me. And so in my daily work, I draw on virtually all of these fields. And so limnology less so, that's lake science. I don't use that every day. But occasionally we do. Second thing I want to tell you about myself is I love my neighborhood. So this idea of designing places people love, this is my life. So I want to share you, I want you to come to my neighborhood with me. So let's take a little tour. So I live in Chicago. My neighborhood is called Ravenswood Manor. It's on a river. You can see the river there. That's the Chicago River. It's a cute little kind of Chicago-style neighborhood with bungalow houses. There's a train stop right in the middle. That's my house. A little one with a red roof on it. 2940 West Leland. And if you're ever in Chicago, come look me up. Right? We're glad. I'll serve you lemonade, or if it's cold out, we'll serve you hot chocolate. So it depends on what time of year you come. So my little house is on a funny little block. It's kind of a triangle. You can see, and there's only about 25 houses on this little triangular block. And I have come to believe that the shape of this block has driven an incredible neighborliness in our neighborhood. So there's 25 families, we know all 25, right? Now do you know where you live? If you went 5 houses this way and 5 houses that way, do you know everyone that lives there? And their children, and their parents, and their children's children, and their parents' parents? We know all those people because every year we have an alley party. So here's our train stop. Right there it is. It's about 100 yards away, 100 meters away. It's the CTA. It takes us to downtown Chicago. So everyone gets on the train together in the morning. You say hello. You often sit together. You chit-chat. And so the social order is reinforced, unlike if you all got in cars and went different directions. So we get to spend a little more time together that way. Here's our local park. It's about a 4-minute walk from my house. And if you have children, the 4-minute rule is very important, because little kids will walk with you to the park, but on the way home, Daddy, please carry me. So it's up here, so it better be not too far, right? 4 minutes I can do, but not much further. Here's the river, which introduces a weird geometry, this diagonal. to our neighborhood, which I actually think helps us a lot. And then have you heard there's a website called WalkScore? Has it come to Mexico yet? I don't know this. No, not yet. Anyway, in the U.S., huge deal. So you can type in any address in the U.S. and it'll give you your walk score from 0 to 100, or from 1 to 100. 78 is pretty good, highly walkable. And increasingly, young people will decide whether to rent an apartment or to move to a neighborhood based on how high the walk score is. Because they don't want to have to drive everywhere. They'd like to be able to walk and bike and run transit. Because the last thing they want to do is spend time in a car. Because you can't use your smartphone when you're driving, because it's against the law. So you're not in touch with your friends while you're driving, right? Right? You know this. You're speaking to the right demographic. So here's my front sidewalk. House is on the left, and you can see, we needed to mow the lawn. It's a little scruffy, but nice, very nice, mature, shaded trees. It's an older neighborhood. Here's our front of our house. It has a porch. It's pretty close to the neighbors. It's stucco. It's 100 years old this year. Here's my front stoop. This is my son here in red some years ago. When he threw his birthday party and I asked him who he wanted to invite, it was all the kids on the block. So there they all are. What did they want to do? They wanted to hang out on the front porch and the steps. That was their idea of having a great birthday. And they got the hose out and they got each other wet and they shoved birthday cake in each other's faces, and it was a big mess. But no cars were involved, no electricity was consumed. It was incredibly local, and they had the best time, right, with their best friends, all of them. So further to why places that people love are sustainable. So here's the space between my house and my neighbor's house. If you look up at the sky, it is 4 inches. So those who say, goodness, I need a mansion on a big piece of ground, I certainly don't have that, right? Every time my neighbor turns a light on in their house, I can tell what room they're in. It's that close, right? So if they're in the bathroom's on the other side, so I don't know that. But I'm glad not to know that. But bedrooms, when they have guests, there's another light on that's not usually on, those kinds of things. So you can keep an eye on people, if that's important, without actually intruding on their privacy. Here's our alley, which is, as I said, we have an annual alley party. Now, because of the weird geometry, there are a couple houses that actually look right out on the alley. Their backyard keeps an eye on the alley. And for years, they organized the party. What do? We close the alley. We serve beer. We have barbecue. We have, do you have this game, bags? Like you toss in a little hole thing? It's sort of like horseshoes. Horseshoes, yeah. And so on. And the neighbors 1 block over also is welcome. So this is every summer in June. And everybody comes. All generations, kids, college students even sometimes come back for it. Here's our neighborhood basketball league. It's called Geezer Ball. Geezer is, a nickname for an old guy. So that's me. But here's all the old guys and some young guys in the neighborhood. So, what's our idea of fun? We get on our bikes, we ride to a church, and use the gymnasium at the church to play basketball. No carbon was used in this fun, right? Because we love the place we're in. Every October, our neighborhood consumes some carbon. We all drive 80 miles to a campground where we all camp right next to each other, right? Now, we were neighbors living right next to each other. We drive 80 miles, pitch tents, and live right next to each other and have fun. So this is the soccer game, right? So sweaty. So the getting there was carbon, but once we're there, we're neighbors again. We just happen to have tents this time. So all pretty crazy, and it's all incredibly local, right? So I don't need trips to Jamaica or Tahiti or to Japan or Europe to be a happy guy. So it turns out our neighborhood called Ravenswood Manor turned 100 years this year. I didn't know that. So there were some historians in the neighborhood started doing some research, so it's 100 years old. Why do we know that? Because our Neighborhood Improvement Association, Ravenswood Manor Improvement Association, was founded in 1914. It's 100 years old. So it's the oldest, what they call civic improvement organization in America, basically a neighborhood group, right, that looks after things to make sure things are being done well. This research revealed something that I didn't know when I moved into the neighborhood, that here was the brochure in 1909 when our neighborhood was first developed. Ravenswood Manor, the first suburb beautiful of the new Chicago. So it was a planned neighborhood. There was a park with some features, a variety of house types. And if you read all of the fine print, this is a delightful place to live. There will be trees and birds. It will be fresh air. You can take the train, the new CTA, the elevated train out there, and there's houses at different prices. And please move here. So that was it, 1909. So they launched not just the house, but the lifestyle that you were going to have, that we have. 100 years later, it said you will know your neighbors, all this sort of stuff. We know our neighbors. Somebody planned this. Somebody urban designed this. And we have the benefits of it today, 100 years later. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the plan of Chicago. So there was a great architect and planner named Daniel Burnham. Familiar name? Burnham? No? Okay. Yep. A couple people. Yes. Thank you, sir. Paid actor to say yes. Thank you for doing that. But the plan of Chicago in 1909 was the first modern plan for any city. Daniel Burnham did the plan of Chicago, went on to do plans for Washington, D.C., Manila, San Francisco, lots of other places. But what this plan did in its day, this is a charcoal rendering of the city from the air. It was the beginning of what's called the City Beautiful movement, which is the beginning of sort of Beaux-Arts urban design. Symmetry, axes, civic buildings with domes, a lot like Paris, but a little more classical, right? So City Beautiful movement, plan of Chicago, Daniel Burnham. And so Chicago owes a lot of what makes it appealing today to that Burnham plan. This is as I say, please come visit. Better in the summer than in the winter, right? But here it is. It was the harbor that was planned by Daniel Burnham in 1909. We should have a harbor. We have a harbor. We have 5,000 sailboats in Chicago now. That's the Sears Tower, now the Willis Tower. But anyway, so a great story of a great neighborhood that was planned, right? And the lifestyle that resulted is one that makes me very happy. So this lovable neighborhood where I live has inspired my work, and I want to talk about that. So our firm, Farr Associates, these are some early, I just want to show you that we did some early buildings with an interest in sustainability. And we didn't really know what that meant in 1990, 1995, and so on. So here are some examples. They were buildings that were all really well insulated. They faced the sun correctly, things like that. That's what we knew to do in buildings. And this was before LEED. But we were very excited about green buildings. At the same time in our firm, working with architects, we didn't have planners or urban designers at the time, we just had architects. We were also doing planning or urban design. So here's 4 different projects from that early period. Some are transit-served places we call TOD, or transit-oriented development, like the one on the right, lower right. Some are neighborhoods, some are parks, some have lakes and things like that. So our firm did buildings and we did places. And so we looked back in 2012, and here's a timeline of our projects. Above the line are our building projects, built work, and then below the line are the plans that we did. And so we were a unique firm in the sense that we were half buildings and half planning. Make sense so far? So what's interesting is that sustainability as a topic arrived at buildings. It started with buildings. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward, which is every building gets an electric bill, or a gas bill, or a water bill, or a sewer bill. You're charged for the utilities that you consume, right? So it's easy to say, for my building, I would like to spend less money on energy next year. So you can account for it. You can track it. You can set a goal and attain progress toward that goal. In buildings. In places, it's a lot harder to do that. How much energy does my neighborhood use? I don't know. I still don't know. If I wanted to reduce it, what would I do? Not really sure, right? So sustainability started at buildings, but we had this kind of revelation in 1999 and 2000 when we were working on a building project and a planning project at the same time, and I want to show you how this turned out. So this is 1998. We had just done this planning project. This is in the city of Chicago. In the foreground is the train, the elevated train, and then we had done this plan for a little neighborhood center. So it's basically 4 buildings around a park. We were just a poor little architecture office at the time because we only had 2 colors of pencil, bad green and bad brown. They're just drab colors, right? So not very exciting. But, you know, here's a little urban design proposal, which is new buildings can be built around a park. And that this was a neighborhood that hadn't had a park for a long time. We were really excited about this plan. 1998, turned it in, the client loved it, started raising money to build it. The next year, 1999, as Carlos introduced me, the Chicago Center for Green Technology was the world's 3rd LEED Platinum building. So that was pretty early. It was the first LEED Platinum renovation of any building. And we did this project for our mayor, a gentleman named Mayor Daley. Anybody heard of him? He's not the mayor anymore. But he said, I want to do green buildings. I want to do them as well as you can do. So we will hire you to be our architects, but you must deliver platinum. We didn't know what was involved. It had not yet been done ever. But we did it here. And we applied, you know, what's called integrated design thinking, back to this idea of professions collaborating. So on the first day when we sat down to design it, we had the architect, we had the structural engineer, we had the mechanical engineer, the civil engineer, we had the landscape architect, all at the table. No decisions were made, and we proposed a series of questions. How can we make this more sustainable at no extra cost? How can we use systems thinking to make a better outcome at no additional cost? And so the building that resulted used some very innovative systems. So this is snow. No one here has ever seen snow, right? So unless you go skiing in somewhere, but snow. So we used a type of heating and cooling called geothermal, or geo-exchange, where you use the ambient temperature of the soil to reject heat or extract heat. Is this familiar to people? Heard of it? A little bit? Kind of not? We know there's an air conditioner and you often have to get rid of the heat that you've rejected. In this case, you just use the soil. So in this case, we have to drill wells down into the shafts, down into the earth 275 feet. So that's a technology we were using. On the right is something you might call a ditch. I don't know what's the Spanish word for ditch? Zanca. So we got very fancy. We stopped calling them ditches, and now we call them bioswales, which is a fancy English word for ditch. But what's different is bioswales are good. Ditches are bad. So bioswales hold water with the intention of letting that water percolate back down into the soil. So a lot of civil engineers view water as a problem. When it falls from the heaven, the goal is to collect it, put it in a pipe, and get it anywhere away from where you are now. That's not necessary, right? So you can actually take the water, put it in a bioswale, and let it go down into the ground. No pipes. Costs less. It's actually prettier. And in this case, what it also did for us was that it kept the soil saturated, kept the soil wet. What that meant was for our heating and cooling system, a saturated soil, a wet soil, is 50% more efficient at transferring heating and cooling. So these two things work together. And I didn't know this until the civil engineer said, I would like to put my water in the ground. And the engineer said, you know, I hope you do, because I can design a smaller system, because it'll be much more efficient. So big light bulb went off. So we put the geothermal under our detention pond. Let's see if I think I had this picture. Anyway, off on the right-hand side is the pond. So these things worked together. And this is just one building, but this could apply at a bigger scale. So we had our aha moment. Aha. Is the same word in Spanish? Aha? Aha? Oh, go ahead. All right. The beginning of sustainable urbanism. Aha. So sustainable urbanism, if you're getting credit for this class, you can write this down. And I think you probably all are. So here you go. So sustainable urbanism was this insight that you take a place, a walkable place, like my neighborhood, that's served by transit. You combine it with high-performance buildings, like the one I just showed you. And then you add in high-performance infrastructure, which we understand are the pipes and the wires that supply buildings with electricity, gas, water, and so on, right? All of these things integrated together. So not a great building with terrible infrastructure or a terrible place with a great building. No, all three good, right? So that's kind of the premise. And the first time we applied this was back at that TOD, the Transit Area Development Project I showed you a minute ago. First of all, we went and bought brightly colored markers. So those two bad colors that you saw, we got rid of the bad colors and we got bright colors. And we said, goodness, let's apply the lessons of the Chicago Center for Green Technology to this entire place. So what's changed? What's changed is the roofs now are thought of either as white roofs, light colored, or heat island preventing roofs. Our vegetated roofs, I think, just a pointer, I'm not sure. Yeah, I've got a pointer. Yeah. Here's a vegetated roof. Some of the other roofs have solar panels on them, continuous photovoltaic panels, which is increasingly common in our work. So the buildings themselves are the high performance. As I said, this is where the train stops, so it's transit served. It's certainly walkable. And then our big intervention, or our proposal, was this park that in the first version was just a park could be our geothermal field. And like we did at CCDT, we directed the water off the streets into the park and put all of the geothermal wells under the park. Right? Pretty cool. So the heating and cooling system for all of these buildings is actually underground under that park. Cool, right? Didn't get built, but hold that thought. So we were excited. We thought this idea of sustainable urbanism, layering place and building and infrastructure together, was going to take the world by storm. Everyone would want it, right? So, without asking, we started providing it to clients in projects. So here was another master plan we did in 2000, a TOD, transit-oriented development for a south suburb. So here's a street. It's a street that collects and filters stormwater, a stormwater street. Here are buildings with vegetated roofs, solar panels, buildings wrapped around, in this case, a parking deck. Here's the train station, and so on. We turned this drawing in. We were so excited to get the client's reaction. And you know what they said? We like the plan. We like where you put the streets and the buildings, but all that green stuff, please, we don't care for it. Get rid of it. It's like, you're kidding me. So yeah. No, it's confusing to us because there's a good plan there, but all that other stuff is just, we don't want it. And so I was really depressed. So rather than redo the drawing, we just put a filter on it. And so what was vegetated and so on is now just kind of like shag carpet, right? You know, this stuff, it's a weird looking roof. It doesn't look like a roof, but you sure can't tell that it's, you know, a vegetated roof. So we turned it back in and the client was happy when we got rid of the environmental ideas, right? Because they didn't actually want them. So we were pretty discouraged. So then we did our next project, 1999. That previous one, I'm telling this story a little out of sequence to tell a better story. So we did this next project for a town called Normal, Illinois. And normal is the word you think it means, which is normal, which is everyday, average, regular, all those things. And so when your town is called Normal, you really do have to try harder. I mean, it's just the truth of it. So we did this plan. This is our Amtrak is the national rail system in the U.S. It stops there. We proposed this sort of downtown node where 5 streets came together and proposed a circle in the middle. We proposed that all the buildings around it would be the new system called LEED, would be LEED buildings, and that somehow the water off the streets and off the building roofs would be collected and filtered in a fountain in the middle of this plaza. That plaza would be the center gathering place for the town. That's what the sketch was all about. And they said, great, we like it, we'll build it. So to build this is a little bit of an anecdote, but for the urban designers especially, and everyone here is going to be an urban designer, because that's my intention. I intend to hypnotize you all to become urban designers. Is anyone not feeling hypnotized yet? I'm working on it. Okay. So there's a thing called form-based codes. Has this gotten mentioned yet? Probably not this semester. Anyway, we can come back to this in the Q&A. But it's a tool for giving guidance to architects on what massing their building needs to be. So, to go back, we wanted all of the buildings around this circle to really contribute to a drum shape. We wanted to have a kind of cylinder shape. So if the architect showed up and said, I'm feeling angular today, that hurt us, right? We didn't want to permit that. So we specified the buildings had to be circular. We wanted a 3-story cornice to establish a kind of first ceiling to that outdoor room, and then a second ceiling at the 6th floor. And we were also calling out places where we really wanted vertical accents on the buildings. And also we required a downstairs arcade. So based on that, we prepared this rendering. So this is the place in the middle of the circle where the water gets captured off the streets and the buildings, gets filtered, and then is in a fountain, right? So that sketch is now rendered at street level here, and it's pretty darn exciting, except for the fact that we didn't realize in proposing this circular thing with streets coming in it that we had described to traffic engineers something called a 1-lane roundabout. Okay, so that's kind of who were the engineers? Okay, cover your ears because I may say something slightly offensive. I will apologize to you. You both seem like delightful people, so I apologize in advance. So the engineers said, goodness, this looks like a 1-lane roundabout. And my book, my engineer book, my menu says, people can't be in the middle of it. I said, really? Why would that be? The engineer said, well, let me read the footnote. Apparently, if a driver is driving into the circle and falls asleep, why they could keep going straight ahead and kill someone. Right? But we have, bollards in the way. Yes, but the guidance doesn't believe the bollards will stop the sleeping driver. So, well, how often does that happen? Well, people have heart attacks. Here's another footnote. What if the driver died and was driving in? I said, well, I think the bollards would stop them. Well, our guidance says the bollards won't stop them. You can't put people in the middle of this, says the traffic engineer. So here is a case of a professional silo, right? An engineer doesn't give themselves permission to use their own judgment. They are looking in this book, nose in the book, no, I can't do it, no, I can't do it, no, I can't do it. But wait, this is the center of the town. This is where everyone wants to congregate. If your sports team wins a big championship, this is where you're going, New Year's Eve, this is where you're going. 4th of July, here, all of that. So, oh, no, I'm sorry, a car, someone might hypothetically fall asleep. So this is crazy. So hold that thought. So all of these projects and the kind of mixed reception that they got, where I was really excited about bringing sustainability to the scale of the place, and the clients weren't understanding it, it didn't make sense. Basically, there was not a market for the service that I wanted to provide. And that's what got me really jazzed to go out and create this tool called Lead Neighborhood. So I was the adjutant to create it. I stalked people at conferences to get them to do this. I made them meet each other. They didn't know each other. They didn't want to meet each other. They met each other. And I just wouldn't take no for an answer. And what was interesting about this was that I really was nobody special. I really wasn't. I was just a guy who was just insistent. I didn't know that much. I didn't have any fancy credential. Nobody sent me. I just was in their face. I just we're going to do this. Here's how it's going to go. You're going to work with and then they started repeating it. Yeah, okay, I'm getting it. We did it. And so these 3 groups came together: the Congress for the New Urbanism, the Natural Resource Defense Council, and the U.S. Green Building Council. So those 3 groups used a LEED system, which you guys have heard about. LEED, a little bit, yeah. and we created LEAD for neighborhood development. And that will be talked about by, I think, another. Is Ted coming this semester? Ted. So we'll let Ted talk about that. But anyway, this was important to me. This is the motive behind LEAD ND, which was I wanted to be able to say, don't take my word for it that this is a good idea. Here is a standard. The standard says it's a good idea. Now, the standard was written by people. People write standards, but the standard gets more power than the individuals that wrote it. Okay? So this was now like, you know, Star Wars, lightsaber. Zzz, zzz, zzz. So this is my lightsaber. Zzz. But all of these projects that we worked on were the intellectual laboratory for LEAD ND, right? So I was very honored when the normal project, this one, certified under LEAD ND in 2008. And then, if that isn't enough, while this is all going on, we wrote this book, which is circulating. Gentleman's got it there. Yeah, check it out. Yeah, not like a library, check it out, but like check it out. Yeah, good stuff. And so the book was also. Good evening. The book was also an attempt to ask this simple question. Certainly, our little firm in Chicago cannot be the only group in the world doing these things. Who else is doing this, and what does that look like? So we did a call for case study projects, which are in the back of the book. Please look at those, and I want to show you a couple of things. So this, forget this term, but basically in planning, because many of you are architects and I don't know your training in planning, I wanted to show you this. So this idea of the neighborhood is what's the Spanish word for neighborhood? Vecindario. Barrio. Okay. Okay. We will debate the most true name, but I will say neighborhood because I know that word. So this diagram on the left is the first official, planning diagram of what's called the neighborhood unit, and it was developed in 1929 by a planner in New York called Clarence Perry. And this neighborhood unit had some very attractive elements. So here it is. It's about 160 acres, which is about a half mile on a side. It's a 10-minute walk from edge to edge, so 5 minutes from center to edge, which is a very, as we've talked about children and walking, 5 and 10 minutes are very nice numbers. In this case, the center of the neighborhood was where the elementary school and the churches went, so that a family and the kids could get to those institutions on a daily basis without crossing a busy street. It says 10% of the whole land area should be devoted to parks and open space. So there are little parks sort of distributed throughout there, and lots of other cool stuff. 1929, a planning unit, shops to go, shopping right there in the neighborhood. So, pretty powerful idea. It was never built purely, but versions of it were built over the years. So, I'm active in the New Urbanism, the Congress for New Urbanism. You've heard of that a little bit? Carlos talked about it somewhere. Where'd he go? Yeah. So I'm actually chair of the board now. So I'm the top dog. But anyway, so the DPZ, Duane Plater Zyberg, a great new urbanist firm in Miami, found this diagram and in 1998 updated it to sort of make it contemporary. There are a few things that never quite worked. They fixed them. For example, it was really hard to get one elementary school in a neighborhood to keep a constant population of school-aged children. Just really hard. So what they did was they moved the neighborhood to the edge so that it could be shared between four adjacent neighborhoods. So you didn't have to constantly close the school and move it over to where the kids were. Kids could get to it more quickly. But the rest of the diagram largely stayed intact. And then when we wrote Sustainable Urbanism in 2006, we stole the same diagram, updated it from the DPZ, and added our environmental features, which I want to talk to you about. So here's that same diagram expanded. The first thing we did was I should go back. The Clarence Perry diagram had this little bit, that's a river. Now you'd never know it, but they couldn't have disregarded the river more thoroughly. So in our case, we think rivers are cool. We think they're really a lot of fun. And they're really nice if you have them, like my neighborhood does, really close to your house. You can go there, you can canoe, you can kayak. If the water were cleaner, we could swim. Or if you're a kid, did anyone ever play outdoors as a kid? Did you ever play in puddles? Did you get a wet bottom? Did any of the did you throw rocks in ponds? You know, all this sort of stuff. We all did this. So this is nature right next to a great neighborhood is great nature. Not degraded nature, but nature that's sort of hands-off, guys. You can use it. There's a jogging trail, but we really want nature to prevail. The animals should feel comfortable and so on. So a nature corridor next to that neighborhood. This is a second corridor that we introduced, which is for what we called the Green Infrastructure Corridor, which was this idea that the waste, the human waste from this neighborhood could be treated underground in this area. And above ground could be orchards, play fields, all this sort of stuff. So you don't have to have a huge sewage plant across town. You can do it right in the neighborhood in a way that creates value. Soccer fields, orchards, those are good things. And then down at the scale of the neighborhood, again, a 3-minute walk to a park, the same shopping stuff that Clarence Perry's had. But we've added things like share cars. Are there share cars in Mexico City now? Yep. So like 1 share car per block. Isn't that cool? Like you could get up in the morning, look out the window and say, there it is, I don't need my car, I'm taking that one. And the premise there is that a family might be able to get away with 1 fewer car, which is a big deal in the U.S. I suspect it's probably true here. That cars consume a lot of money, they certainly consume a lot of carbon, and so on. So anyway, that was our diagram, and with this premise designed so well that people delight in meeting their daily needs on foot and bike. So that's sustainability without any hammer. There's no should, there's no guilt. Just, hey, there's a delightful place. Why would you ever want to go anywhere else? Like, everything's here. It's heaven on earth. So, case studies, I want to take you through a couple of them from the book. Page 226, if you're looking at the book, you can look at it right up close. A project called Dockside Green in Victoria, British Columbia. So this was a really inspiring project on a lot of levels. It did all of these things, which is a lot of things. So it's 15 acres. It's a pretty small project. It's on the waterfront in Victoria, British Columbia. I want to point out to you in the site plan, you can see this little sort of stretch of blue right up the middle. That is a water feature. Hold that thought. So it's 26 buildings overall. All of the systems are district systems. District energy, district gray water, district wastewater, car share, bike share. And the reason for this was not an environmentalist's mandate. Turns out the developer, while he was an environmentalist, is an accountant. You know, the most pejorative term you can use to describe an accountant is a bean counter. He is a bean counter. He counts pennies and nickels and dollars and pesos to make sure that the development is built as cheaply as it could be. And I know him, he's a friend of mine, and he said, you know, Doug, why would I build 26 mechanical rooms? Why would I build 26 cooling towers? Why would I build 26 of anything when I can build 1 or 2 big ones? They're more efficient, I can use less labor to maintain them, and there's an efficiency on many levels. The space in each building devoted to mechanical systems goes down. I make more money that way too. Like the way he described, there are 4 or 5 different ways he's making money by shifting from an individual building system to a district system. Now the one thing that I like to talk about that Joe Van Bellingham, the developer, did is this one thing. There's 26 buildings, and he pledged all 26 will be LEED Platinum. Now at the time he did that, which was 2003 was when he made the pledge. In the entire planet Earth, there were 24 LEED Platinum buildings. So one little project in the corner of Canada single-handedly says, I'm going to double the world's supply of LEED Platinum buildings. And it gets better. He said, and if I don't, if every building here isn't LEED Platinum, here's $1 million. And city, you keep it. So he pledged $1 million bond, forfeitable if he didn't achieve it, against this pledge. I said, Joe, you're an accountant. Come on, you don't risk money. He said, there was no risk. How could that be? He said, well, we designed everything. We designed each building to be efficient. Then we attached it to a district system, which was efficient. And we never did any energy modeling of any sort until the end. It's like we just pursued good decisions along the way. We got to the end and said, how are we doing? He measured it. Lead platinum just fell out. No effort. Cool, huh? Now that's integrated design. Now that water feature, I want to talk to you about the water feature. So here's the water feature down the middle, right? And turns out what this is he installed an on-site waste treatment system. So it turns out in this part of Canada, which seems to me very primitive, if your project is right on the water, you can just put a pipe and pump your shit, pardon my English, pump your shit right out into the bay, which is terrible, right? You say, well, we can't be this great environmental project and do that. We need to build a sewage treatment plant. But because none of our competitors have to build a plant, our prices will be higher and we won't be able to sell things. So what he figured out was the best integrated design solution I've ever heard of. Turns out this water feature is the fourth stage, the cleansing stage of his wastewater. What he figured out was that he laid out the plan in such a way that all these townhouses faced a water feature. And in this integrated design, he had his engineers and his architects and his landscape architects and his realtor, the person that was going to sell these units, sitting at the design workshop. He said, we want to do this water, we've got to have a water feature. And the realtor said, you know, I can get a premium, I can sell those houses for more money with the water features. Well, how much more? I said, $100,000 more. How many do we have? 40. What does the sewage system cost? $4 million. So the real estate premium fully paid for the waste treatment system because people like facing water, even though it was the sewage system, right? Oh my God. So I've been there, and you know, you think, oh my God, here we go, this is going to be bad. No smell. It's a kind of black box engineering system, and this is just the oxygenation where it's aerated and turned and so on. And it's delightful. It's beautiful. Anyway, great integrated design project. Here's another one I like talking about. BedZ. Have people heard of this one in England? This is a great sustainable project as well. And it turns out, I'm showing these in reverse order for a reason. Turns out BedZ inspired Dockside Green. So this one's BedZ started in 1999, Dockside Green about 2003. So the developer of Dockside Green visited BedZ while it was under construction and said, I want to do BedZ in Canada, or BedZ for North America. That's exactly what his assignment to himself was, which is so fascinating. Hold that thought. So BedZ stands for Beddington, which is the town it's in, Zero Energy Development, Z-E-D, right? Beddington Zero. So, and the premise of this one, the client in this case was a not-for-profit called Bioregional, and it's an environmental group with a very high commitment to carbon reduction, ecological footprint, things like that. And so they got some land. They planned it out with, let's see, the counts here, yeah, 82 houses, 26,000 square feet of office on 4 acres. So it's really, really compact. But their goal with this project was to live within a one-planet footprint. So do you know the term ecological footprint? It's this idea that the Earth has a certain carrying capacity, and we use a lot more than one planet. So, you know, USA requires the equivalent of 4 Earths to maintain that lifestyle. Singapore, 8 Earths. Afghanistan, 0.01 Earths. So very environmental when you're living in a very low resource lifestyle. But anyway, so their goal was, can we make a modern place that respects the capacity of the planet, one planet, and achieve zero net carbon emissions, reduce heat consumption by 90%, potable water 30%, so on and so on and so on. And there you have it. And here's the finished project. If you haven't seen it before, it's fresh. It doesn't look like anything else. So what this really is a series of row houses or townhouses. South is to our left. So what you see here are south-facing sort of greenhouses or sun spaces. You can see the photovoltaic panels there. This is a vegetated roof. It's red. It's a sedum, a species of plant that is a succulent that does very well in wet and dry conditions. And then these chimney-like things are actually the ventilation systems. So that rather than use fans to pull air out of the units, these wind vanes, when the air blows across them, it creates a suction. And so the air is ventilated without the use of fans. So no electricity required there. So it's incredibly integrated design, right? I think I've got a diagram. Yeah, here we go. So, the wind vanes draw the vent air. All the rainwater is collected to flush toilets. So they're really trying to maximize use of toilet or of rainwater. They have the photovoltaic panels on days when the electricity isn't needed. They use it to charge electric vehicles. They were powering their heat off a biofuel chip thing. Basically tree limbs. They would put in a chipper and it would burn them up. And so they were perfectly renewable. Anyway, district heating, district cooling. Actually no cooling. Anyway, this diagram you kind of get. And then this firm, Arup, have you heard of Arup? They're killer. They're great. They're European, they're global, and really world leaders in this integrated design stuff. So bioregional, out of this project evolved the One Planet principles, 10 One Planet principles, which start with carbon, waste, zero net carbon, zero net waste, sustainable transport, you can read the list, food, water, habitats, culture, equity and fair, health and happiness. Right? And they measure all of these things in this project to see how they did. Because they built it as an experiment and then they recorded the results of that experiment. So two things to say at least. One is, we've since worked with this list and I think they got it wrong. They got it wrong because they started at the wrong end. Right? I have found people like talking about happiness a lot more than they care about talking about carbon. Especially if you're doing a community meeting, say, I can't wait to help you become a zero carbon community. Like, don't I have a television show to watch? Don't I have to file my nails? Don't I have to do anything but listen to this guy talk to me about carbon? But like having a happy place, like I'm all over that. Like it's fun. I've showed you the neighborhood I live in. It's a very happy neighborhood, so I have conviction. So we've reversed this list, but I quibble. The actual punchline of this slide is this. So when they went and measured all of the benefits from BedZ, this place, and how close they got to their goal of one footprint, they got to one. So the UK requires 3.25 planets, something like that, on average. So it's not sustainable nationally. They were aiming for 1.0. They got to 1.2, which was, by all accounts, very good. Right? They didn't get there, but they got really close. And what they found when they measured things was that 63% of the reduction of footprint came from things that architects and engineers do. Insulation, solar panels, better windows, electric cars, all this kind of stuff. What we would call bricks and mortar improvements. And 37% were changes in conduct. People just behaved differently. No cost. Isn't that cool? So if you're doubting the profession of architecture, go back and become a behavioralist, because I think it's actually going to pay off. And I'm quite serious about that. This I think is the 63-37 split. They've done 2 projects since then and measured them. They think it's closer to 60-40, 60 bricks and mortar, 40 behavior change. Now bioregional is solely focused on the behavior change. Everyone else knows how to do insulation and solar panels and is figuring it out. Nobody knows behavior. So that's, to me, a great, exciting, fun frontier. So that's another one. So remember those projects from about 10 minutes ago where I was mad that they didn't like our stuff? There was the project that said, get rid of that, so we turned the drawing from color to black and white, right? The client that didn't like that was the Regional Transit Authority. And 10 years later, this happened. They began to promote LEED neighborhood development. So talk about a long game, a lightsaber, but So they told me no, and I was that mad kid that just said, okay, I'm going to get you. I'm just going to get you. And how did I go get them? We went and embedded Lead ND. We made it popular. We made it attractive. And we made it honorable enough so that a public unit of government, the Regional Transit Authority, felt comfortable endorsing it as a good practice. So the thing they said no to in 2000, they require 10 years later. So hold that thought. So patience is rewarded. And then here's the circle in normal that I told you about. The engineer that said you cannot have people in the middle. You cannot have people in the middle. We'll look at this picture. People in the middle. Right? So what happened? What happened? How did we do that? So this is the postcard shot of this town. If you visit anyone within 10 miles of here, you get taken here. You get bought ice cream, you get walked in circles. I mean, it's not that great. It's pretty good. But for them, it's great. It's a lot of fun. You see everybody, a lot of social interaction, all this sort of stuff. How did this happen? So, one issue was the engineer and the fact that people shouldn't be in the middle. The second one we had, I don't know if you ever heard this rule, when you're designing a public space with water in it, you're directed not to make the water any deeper than 1/4 inch. Have you heard this rule? Maybe the landscape architects don't do this. Why? Someone could theoretically drown. Now think of what would have to happen for that person to drown. So they would have to fall down, they would have to be on their side with their mouth open, and then the wind kind of blowing, and then no one paying attention, and then about 10 other things. I'm not even quite sure what the drowning would look like. But so the word we got, so we can't make water that deep. You just can't. People drown in it. It's like, really? I don't think so. So we made it, like 1.5 feet deep, and it's deep enough so that in the heat of the summer, kids jump in it. Parents are standing there, glad that the kids are busy, all this kind of stuff, right? And the town voted for it, which they didn't have to do. And so some of these things take a little conviction. Like you have to disregard your lawyer's advice. Because the lawyers are saying, no, this is a real problem because we think there's a big liability. There's a term in the law called an attractive nuisance. That is to say, a place that draws you to it and then puts you at harm, right? This was very much it. Like people want to come here and they want to get in the water. Like how many people are going to drown every year? Like dozens, right? No, right? So here was the tip-off too. So there's a university right down the street here. When people of your age, frankly, started drinking beer and putting their feet in the fountain, we knew we had something. Like this is really cool. So this is, again, bringing people together. The size of the water feature is so that you can face each other almost like across a table and have a nice chat and so on. So this project that we lost 2 years to the engineers trying to get approved ended up in 2011 winning the Best New Civic Space Design in America award, National Award, Best Place in America. And then my favorite part was this one. The next year we won the Transportation Planning Excellence Award from the Federal Transit Administration, who were the people that told us we weren't permitted to do it. So that was another 10-year jump from you can't do it to let me give you our highest award, right? So all you young people, we're all young people, but be patient, right? If you've got the vision and you're right, just stick with it. Okay? Kind of cool, huh? Doing okay? Doing okay? All right, good. So I want to show you a couple other projects that we have done, our office, Farr Associates, that are trying to do this, scaling up sustainability to be about the place. So here's a project we got. It's called Whistler Crossing. It's a large area. That's future phases. We really did this one little box there on the left. There are some existing townhouses that were historic eligible. We renovated. We built 2 new buildings here and a little kind of main street. Excuse me. And won lots of awards. It's Lead ND. It's the Burnham Planning Award. All these kinds of cool things. But what I want to show you is this. So what we tried to do across the site was what those drawings showed about all the stormwater would basically go back into the soil near where it fell. Rather than using pipes a lot, we wanted to use it just across bioswales. across the land. And this is called a flow preventer, flow restrictor, flow restrictor. So let me just show you this. So here's our site. It's long and skinny, and we're trying to convey, we need to convey, that's high, this is low, so the water's going to exit down at the bottom of this thing. So our proposal was to use no pipes and just have a kind of continuous bioswale or ditch. If you want to call it a ditch, that's fine. But a bioswale along here. And they said, you can't do that. And the reason was, our engineer said we would require 2 3-inch diameter flow restrictors. And the engineer said, we only permit 4-inch diameter flow restrictors. So to the engineers, please don't become this kind of engineer. Okay? So here's a little example. What we wanted to do was across the backyards of these are townhouses and backyards and so on. We wanted to just run the water across the backyard. And so you'd have a little divot. And on rainy days, you'd have a wet patch, whatever. What they made us do because of all this was put in huge 2-foot diameter pipes to store the groundwater. This is rain. This is not toxic. This is not Chernobyl. This is not, I don't know, bad. But we had to spend another $250,000 because of this 3-inch versus 4-inch flow restrictor. So please, engineers, have some flexibility. Have some compassion for us in the future. So then what we did was we directed all of the water, once we had to put in the pipes, this median in the street became our feature for how we did. So here's how we handle water off a building, comes down in a downspout. There's some little splash blocks there, basically rocks, a bioswale next to the building, and so on. And then this median planter in the middle of the street. So you see that's a little slotted curb. So we just use this to store water and re-infiltrate the ground with it. Here it is right after a rainstorm, water standing in it. Here it is with flowers growing. And what's interesting about this is that I was talking to my client about it. Let me go back here or here. He said, you know, Doug, and we were finished, and it was like 3 years later. He said, you know, Doug, it's too bad that was such a failure. Peter, what are you talking about, a failure? Yeah, kids, they always get in that thing, and they're down there. They're like kids hanging around and playing. It's like it's such a failure. Like, you mean it's a failure? Like, wait a minute, I did that as a kid. Did you do that as kids? Well, yeah, And so turns out the problem was it was attractive to kids to play it, right? And it runs the risk of being too deep. People could drown, all this kind of stuff. But we had never thought it through as a play space. And so we're going to go back now and redesign it and figure out what a play space is that is also a stormwater facility that can go from 0 to 5 feet deep of water. Like, how does that look? And it's not like the floods are going to come and the kids are going to be trapped and the tsunami's coming and you can't run fast enough. No. It's all quite gradual. So anyway, people are really excited, right? And so, kind of cool. I admit to some cognitive dissonance about how to think about this, but I do think we missed the boat, but it's not too late. Here's another project we did, Granite City. It's about a master plan for about 400 units of housing. Here's the first phase that's drawn in a different manner. On the left is some older housing that's being torn down, the brown stuff, and on the right is our new, shining new master plan stuff. And this project does everything that we could think of, and it's a quirky little project. But so our streets are made of pervious pavers. Have you seen those or heard of those? Water goes down in the slots, and then there's gravel or rock below the pavers that can hold water. And so a drop of water disappears instantly. A hose disappears instantly. A fire hose disappears. It's got the capacity to store 5 inches of water in 15 minutes, like a lot of water. So nothing ever floods, no tripping hazard, all these kinds of nice things. Every building here, every south-facing window has direct sun on December 21st, which is kind of a big deal in the north because it gets so depressing and so dark, right? But it's also providing heat. cute little houses. So we've got solar panels on all of these houses now, which is increasingly the norm. I don't know if it's, I don't see it as much down here, but I don't spend as much time here as you do. But kind of cool stuff. And so we were able, with these limited rooftop panels, to power 10% of the building's electrical needs. 10%. So not every building got them. We didn't even run them to the edge. So anyway, we're learning things. And these are all super, super insulated buildings with, during the summer, the hot water for dishes and for showers and for laundry comes as a waste byproduct of the cooling cycle. So we don't create heat in the summer, which makes sense because you have a lot you're trying to get rid of. And other cool heat exchange features. So I don't want to make that point. So here's another project of ours, Harper Court, which is, have you heard of this guy, Obama? So that's his house in Chicago. And so that's Harper Court. So he's 2 blocks, call it 10 blocks away. We don't see him as much. He lives in this other house, La Casa Blanca, right? So here's Harper Court. So our little project has, later phases we'll build a 35-story building. Here's our master plan, and in it we proposed a cute little street that would be a private street that you could close off for events. So here was our original design on the street, so that you could close it at night. It would have catenary lighting at the ceiling for event spaces and so on. And this project went on to get 4 levels of LEED. There's different LEED products: neighborhood, building, interiors, and operations. So it got all 4. Neat project. We tried to get district gray water, that is to use reclaimed water to flush toilets. And you may say, ooh, that's gooey or whatever. I don't know if anybody feels that way. But we were really interested in trying it. And in an office building, there really isn't that much water. It's not like a house where you have showers and laundry and so on. You really just have sinks and toilets. And so anyway, we priced it, but we couldn't afford it in the end. This next project is a neat one. East St. Louis is a very rough city, down in its luck next to St. Louis, Missouri. So this is the Mississippi River here, this big blue thing. So we did 3 projects. I'm going to talk about one of them on the light rail line in St. Louis. So St. Louis is the city that has the arch, right? The big arch. Maybe you've seen it. So we proposed this building in the foreground, and as I say, it's right across the street from the light rail there. And what we proposed was just this crazy building that was devoted to urban agriculture. So every door, every unit, so it's apartments above and then shops below and a food deal here. Every unit has a little kind of balcony, and the door opens, and there's a little, what's called an earth box. It's a kind of self-contained planter that everybody has. And then this part of the roof, 1/2 acre, is set up for agriculture. And then each of the 3 floors has a terrace that's also set up for agriculture. I'll let that happen. So here's the rendering, right? So clock tower, wind turbine, and then the terraces like so. And then you can see each of the doors with the balconies and the little earth boxes. So this project is just finished. And then this is a healthy food place. And I don't know if you guys have this issue here, but we have something called food deserts. They're parts of cities where you can't get any good food. You can only get potato chips or junk food. So this is a real need. So this is the rendering, and this is not a professional photograph yet. We're not done, but you can see it looks pretty like the rendering, which is kind of nice when that happens. And the cafe and bakery and grocery is open there. And we're going to go back and get some pictures. Here's an earlier construction photo. We were inspired in an Art Deco manner in this case. So you can see the kind of detailing there in the terraces, which hadn't been painted or fitted out yet. Here's the building from a distance. So there's a jazz trumpeter named Miles Davis. People know Miles Davis, grew up in East St. Louis. So this project is called Jazz. And I don't know if you can see these are the scuppers that convey the water off the roof. Those are little trumpets there. And then if you look at the whole facade, it was inspired by the keys of the piano. The black keys and the white keys sort of turned up. So here's a detail, a traffic circle. Now we're not afraid of them. We just do them all the time now. Yeah, people can be in the middle, I know. So I just take that. What's that? It ran out of money. Yeah. 2011, bad year for money. So anyway, here's the circle. The building has a hole in it. A street goes through. There's the bridge and the terraces and so on. And you can see there's Miles Davis's trumpet. And here's, they're just getting started, but here's the little door. So everybody can open a door out to a little balcony that has this little grow box thing in it. So we're just on the break, but I want to get through a couple of things, and I think we'll have a good break. So can we go about 10 more minutes, something like that? People will not die. You will not drown. You will not get hit by a car. None of those things. Okay, good. So what I've shown you is sustainable urbanism kind of 1.0. And what I want to talk to you about now is 2.0. And so the book that you're seeing, whatever, we have a contract to do a second edition. So it came out in 2007, which was really written in 05 and 06, so it's almost going to be 10 years later. We've learned a lot of things. So I want to talk about what we've learned. So 2.0. So since all of that, we have done 2 different net zero energy buildings. And net zero is a term that gets thrown around, but it's pretty hard to do. What it means is all of the energy that your building uses is produced on site. So this is a house. This is a kind of a nice architect-designed house. We were the architect, so we like how nice it is. It's got these roofs we call in English butterfly roofs, mariposa roofs, whatever, and they collect water. And you can see they also are the place where the solar panels are mounted. There's a little courtyard in the middle. Here's what it looks like on the inside. So it's that beautiful sort of butterfly roof, incredibly light-filled. And let me show you some diagrams. So here's the house. Here's all the swell systems that we integrated to get this house to be net zero in Chicago, which is really hard. It's really hard to heat a house in Chicago and be net zero. So we had geothermal wells. We had solar panels for electricity, photovoltaic panels. We had solar panels for heat, hot water panels, cross ventilation, shading, all this sort of stuff, triple glazing, and the like. And so the first winter, the house was occupied, and we got to 90%. We wanted to be 100% energy. We got to 90%. And we were shocked because we thought we were going to be over 100%, and we weren't. And there were a couple of things that needed to be reprogrammed in the software, and so we reprogrammed it. Next winter, 95%. We're not there yet. And our engineer, this is the part where engineer concern turns to engineer love. So wherever you are, we love engineers that come up with stuff like this. So the engineer says, you know what? The reason we're not getting to 100% is because winters are so severe in Chicago, your ability to extract any heat out of the soil in January and February is almost non-existent. But you know what we have a lot of in the summer is hot water. And so what they figured out to do was in the summer, in July and August, they would use this system in reverse to increase the temperature of the soil 275 feet down by 3 degrees. So they would take the hot water, which is like 150 degree water, run it down in the pipes, and heat that column of soil so that in January or February, 6 months later, you place a phone call, excuse me, soil, I would like my heat back because I need it to heat the house. And so that was last winter. We still don't know it yet. But isn't that cool? So engineers, we like. When they're really good like that, that was so good. So, but this idea of using the soil as a 6-month heat wheel, heat cycle, whatever you want, heat storage, thermal mass, is incredible. So we're going to get more sophisticated with these things as we go on. Now, do you recognize this guy, Steve Jobs? People know who Steve Jobs is. Apple computer, my computer, soon to be our watch. We're going to have implants in our teeth soon with the Apple teeth. I'm sure it's happening. So now, you may not have known that before Steve died, he was working on a project. And no, it was not iPad. It was not iPhone 6 or 6 Plus. It's this little guy up in the corner here. Can you read that? iNeighborhood. Steve Jobs, Apple computer, iNeighborhood. Welcome to iNeighborhood. Learn about how Apple is bringing their world-class user experience and seamless integration of hardware and software to a neighborhood near you. Isn't that cool? What if Apple designed a neighborhood? Wouldn't it be intuitive? Wouldn't it be fun? Would you like to live there? Would you be dancing with the headphones, like, you know, the commercials? I mean, what would it be like? So here's a rendering, right? Here's what, you know, here's an iNeighborhood, an Apple neighborhood. And it's got stuff going on, like there's stuff underground. Seems like panels, taller buildings, shorter buildings, some parks, wind turbines, pretty cool. And then it's got these layers. I'm not quite sure what that's about. So I've just lied to you. Steve Jobs never thought of the iNeighborhood. But I had you. For a minute, you thought, this is going to be cool, right? So neighborhoods can be designed by architects and landscape architects and engineers serving as urban designers. Why can't we think of a neighborhood the way Steve Jobs would think of a neighborhood? Totally integrated, from my phone to my walk, to my calories, to my car, to my building, to my information, to the movie I want to watch, to where